Hi everyone, in today's video we'll talk about why most companies remain male-dominated even if most HR departments are full with women. And to talk about this subject, I'm super happy to introduce my guest Amy Matos. Amy is a badass mother and business owner helping female entrepreneurs to shine with their brand, with their voice and messaging. And before becoming a successful entrepreneur featured in FemCity, Tribe Global, Medium, CCG, and many more, she worked for 10 years in HR as a business partner and also as a consultant. Amy, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah. I'm so glad we connected over LinkedIn. Somehow the magical of social media, we saw each other in our feeds and now we're doing this interview.
I know, it's amazing how it brings people together from literally all over the world, and now here we are.
Yeah, amazing.
I know.
So let's dive in.
Awesome.
So my first question is, before you worked in HR, you've been harassed from men at work. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what happened?
Yeah, sure. So back a long time ago when I was just starting my professional career, I worked for a good company and I had a job that I enjoyed. And it was funny because, back then I had just graduated college and I didn't really know much about the business world, or I didn't know about HR. I had never really experienced anything like that before. And, there was a gentleman there who was an older gentleman. He was pretty senior and powerful kind of in the organization. I forget what his title was at the time, but you kind of knew who this guy was. He was kind of like an important leader in the company. And so there were two sort of weird incidences, or two separate incidents that sort of happened. One was with this gentleman, and he just kind of found a way to always make comments to me about what I was wearing, how I looked, whether or not something looked good with my eyes or not, that cheesy pickup line. He would say that to me. There was one day I was seated at the cafeteria and my shirt must have snuck up a little bit to the point where you could see my underwear a little bit, and he made a comment loud in the cafeteria about, "Hey everybody, look, I can see Amy's underwear." And of course it's mortifying to even just be like, "Oh gosh, you can see my underwear right now?" I thought I was wearing, something that was not going to do that, and now the whole cafeteria knows. And so he just kind of always there was always something that had to do with how my hair was that day or what color my shirt was. It was just constant about my looks or my appearance or what I was wearing. So there was that. And then at the same company, there was a different situation. There was a gentleman there, and he was just kind of like a peer, in a different department. And he would always come over to me and ask me to go out. He would ask me to dinner. He would ask me to a movie and it turned into a thing where it was literally like every day or every other day. And everybody started to know about that this was going on, because where we sat, my cubicle was here, and right behind me was the cafeteria. And so literally it became so frequent that people would sit in the cafeteria and watch, and he would walk over to my cubicle and he'd stand behind my shoulder, and I would know that he was there, and I'm sitting there trying to do my work, but it's every day I know that he's coming. And then he would say, "Amy, do you want to go on a date?" And I would say, "No, I don't date guys from work," because that was just the easiest. I felt bad because he's not trying to be mean. He's wanting to take me out, but I wasn't interested. And it was just kind of uncomfortable. I didn't really know what to do. I didn't want to be rude or mean about it. But it was kind of embarrassing. So then literally he would come and he would ask, and then he would leave, and I would look, and everyone would be behind me watching. And it was kind of a joke. Other people there started to joke about it and say, "Oh, have you heard from so-and-so lately? What's the new place he wants to take you?" And it just became such this known thing. There were managers there that knew that this was going on, and nobody ever did kind of anything about it. So eventually I did go to the human resources department because I didn't know what else to do. And that was kind of how I learned about HR and interacting with HR and what to do and where to go when you have these types of experiences. Unfortunately, I don't think mine was handled. I came to learn that it wasn't handled the right way. But it kind of is what set me on my career path and everything that's come after that. So it's, at the time it was kind of difficult and awkward and uncomfortable, to say the least, but now it just kind of is what it is, and it's part of my background, I guess.
And so do you think that the first guy you described did it only with you, or also with other?
I'm pretty sure that he did it with others. I think he probably thought he was joking or being funny. I really think this individual was from a different country originally. So I think, and this is what when I went on to get into HR, and I would run into these situations all the time from the other side of the fence, from being on the HR side of the fence. The 9 times out of 10, I feel like the people that I would talk to, like, they weren't genuinely trying to make somebody feel uncomfortable. They weren't trying to harass or discriminate. Like, they just genuinely didn't know and didn't get it. Like, the guy who's sitting there asking me on dates every day, like, he really thought that was okay. That's not okay, and he needs to know better than that. But, like, he's not trying to make me feel uncomfortable. He literally wants to take me on a date. This older guy, he was from a different country, and I can remember telling myself, well, maybe it's different where he's from. Maybe there's a language thing. I kept making sort of excuses for him, even as I just did for the guy who asked me on a date. It's like I kept making excuses. And I think women who are in these situations, we often make excuses for the other person's behavior. And we shouldn't. They should know better. Companies should know better. He didn't do that with just me. I would see him act like that with others. I think he probably thought he was being playful, and he thought it was no big deal. It is a big deal. And he should have known better.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you advise to women who maybe find themselves in the same situation?
Yeah. So I would say, so what ended up happening in my case is I did eventually go to HR and I spoke with them. Now, and again, I'll say this with a caveat because I know you work with women all over the world. Every country is kind of different. Everyone has different laws and different things. I think if something's going on, you should say something, no matter where you are, because there are pretty much everywhere nowadays has laws. They have HR departments, most of whom do the right thing. There's unions or workers' councils. You don't have to deal with this. It can be very intimidating to go in and talk to probably a stranger and say, oh, hi, HR director who I've never met and who controls my salary and my benefits and all these other things. Let me complain about something that's going on. Like, that's a really intimidating thing to do. But oftentimes they don't know what's going on. And if they don't know, they can't fix it. And so, particularly, in my case, I did go to HR and I did speak with her about it. Unfortunately, she didn't handle it the right way, which, I didn't know at the time. I came to learn after over a decade in the HR space. At least here in the US, if companies become aware of the fact that something like this is going on, they have an obligation to look into it and investigate and take corrective action to make sure that it stops and doesn't happen again. Their retaliation is not allowed, so you can't get in trouble. They can't fire you. In my case, the person who shared with me, she was kind of intimidating to me. She was saying, well, if you want to file an official complaint, then we're going to have to investigate the matter, which is really intimidating. I'm like 22 years old. I'm not like, even the guy, I'm not trying to get him in trouble. Like, I just want this stuff to stop. And, so she spoke about it to me in a way that was intimidating to me and made me feel like I was going to get in trouble or that something bad was going to happen to me. So I remember saying to her, well, no, I don't want to make an official complaint. I don't want to make an investigation then. Just forget I ever came in here, which was what I did in my situation. That is wrong. Like that was completely mishandled, and she should not have handled it that way. It's actually still to this day, it's kind of shocking to me that that's how she handled it. I genuinely believe that, and from both my experience when I was in corporate HR and when I was in HR consulting, I would say 98% of companies, I believe, genuinely want to do the right thing. There are some companies out there that I don't think do the right thing, but most of them want to do the right thing. I don't think they always know what's going on. And usually when you bring it to their attention, they're going to try to do what they can to make it right. And if you find yourself in a situation where they're not doing it to make it right, then that's where you need to look at your external resources. You need to look at the laws in your state. You need to talk to the Attorney General's office. You need to talk to the union or the Workers' Council or there are organizations out there specifically for women's rights in the workplace. Like, these are the people that you need to be calling, because you don't have to tolerate that. It is not okay. You shouldn't be making excuses for other people's behavior, and they should be taking it more seriously.
I guess it's really tricky when you are that young, because now with more experience, it's easier to realize what's not okay.
Right.
And I feel like as soon as you like notice bad emotions, you should trust like how you feel, and
trust your gut.
As soon as you feel bad, something is wrong. And I think like maybe women, we tend to think that we are in the wrong and that we don't know anything, and then it's easy to find yourself in the situation you had where the person is not very helping. Then it's like, okay, no, I'm gonna be quiet, and everyone should just trust their emotions and go.
It was totally intimidating. I remember thinking, oh gosh, like, I'm not looking for this guy to lose his job over this. Like, I'm not looking to but I just leave me alone. That's all. And so it's hard, and it was confusing to have another woman speak to me in such a way that, well, are you sure you want to file a complaint? Because then we're going to have to investigate. Yeah. Like, that's a really intimidating thing. Whereas what she should have been saying is, I'm sorry, if I turned around and said to her, well, I don't want you to investigate, I'm not looking for anyone to get in trouble. What she should have said to me is, well, thank you. And I understand why you feel that way. However, I have an obligation to make sure that you're safe here. And I can't ignore this anymore. And so I'm going to make sure that you're still comfortable and no one's going to retaliate against you, and you're not going to get in trouble for this, and don't worry, but I have to protect you, is what she should have said. And she didn't. But that's okay. It's funny. It's one of those things that, unfortunately happens kind of a lot. And I think what women in particular need to remember, and this is funny because when I went on to do HR consulting, I would go out to clients and train them on sexual harassment and even other types of harassment that are racially related or over other things. And I would always speak to them and say, and people don't realize this, it doesn't matter whether or not you intended to hurt someone's feelings. That is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you had no poor intentions. What matters is how the person, me, felt about it and how it made me feel. And I think it's important for women to know that. It doesn't matter that he was probably trying to be funny, or he wasn't meaning to hurt my feelings, or he was just trying to compliment me and ask me on a date. Like, none of that matters. What mattered is that it made me really uncomfortable. It was really embarrassing having all of these managers watch all of this stuff going on and do absolutely nothing about it. That's what matters. And so if you find yourself in this situation, don't try to, excuse it away by saying, oh, well, he's not meaning to do that. Or it could even be a she. It's not even like exclusively a guy-girl thing. Like, this person, it doesn't matter whether or not they mean to do it. If it's making you feel uncomfortable, do like you said and listen to your gut and go talk to the HR department. And if the HR department doesn't treat it seriously, there are external agencies out there that will take it very seriously.
And these were two very hard cases. Have you also experienced some kind of more subtle harassment?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, those have been the only two that I have personally have been directed towards me. Over the course of my career, I've seen a ton of things. Just by working in the HR space. So what ended up happening eventually, I left that company, not because of that. That eventually subsided and I was fine. And I actually decided that I wanted to go into HR, and there was no room for HR at that organization. So I moved and went elsewhere. You don't work in the HR space as long as I did and not see other things directed at other people that don't bother you. So those are the only two things that were directed towards me. But, I've seen lots of different things, whether it be direct.
What did you decide to go into HR?
I think it was a combination of, so I didn't go in college. I didn't go to business school. I really didn't know what HR was. So when I started working, the HR department wasn't very involved. I didn't see them much. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know what it was all about. And so after that experience and being like, oh, geez, I wonder what this, like, who is this, these HR people, and how is this supposed to be? Because afterwards, I was just kind of curious, like, did they do the right thing? Did they not do the right thing? Like, I just kind of wanted to know. And so I just started researching what HR really was meant to be about. And I realized I kind of wanted to do that. Like what it should be about is trying to help the company to empower their people and, have policies and programs and benefits and all these things in place so that people can come to work and be their best self and do their best work. And just, we don't have to all get along, but we have to respect one another, and then we go home and get on with our lives. When I realized what HR was really meant to be about, in kind of partnering with the business to try to put in place policies and programs to help the people, that's when I realized that that's what I wanted to do. And I could see, again, the company that I was at, that wasn't their philosophy on it. So that's why I went elsewhere.
And do you feel that you were able to make a difference for women?
Yeah, I think there were times, I think there were lots of times where I was able to, because, in the internal HR side, like I would regularly have employees that would come in, and it's almost kind of like coaching in many respects, where they would say, I'm dealing with this situation with my manager, not, so I want to make a distinction. So anytime that someone came to me and reported an issue of harassment, like I have to investigate, and I have to look into that. So unfortunately, I had to investigate lots of issues of harassment and discrimination over the course of my career. And so I think in those instances, I certainly would like to believe that I helped the people involved. It wasn't always just women, but, people who felt like either because of their race, their sexual orientation.
Oh, we seem to have some technical difficulties.
Deal with that we took. Pardon me?
Okay, it was you blocked for a moment.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not sure at what point it cut, but what I was saying is, when people came to me, I would always make sure that I responded in the way that I wish the people dealt with me. So I definitely think I helped in those situations. But when there were other issues, that weren't related to harassment, just like coming in and women wanting to, get their next raise or figuring out how to grow their career, like you end up doing a lot of almost career coaching when you're in the HR department, and helping employees, helping leaders, helping managers, be more productive in the work environment. And so it was very enjoyable for me to, be able to kind of almost be like a coach to them in some ways. Like, okay, well, this is how you can try to ask for a raise, or this is what you can do, to have a better relationship with your boss, or this is how you can get along with your teammate better. So I'd like to think that I made, a difference in some of the people's lives that I worked for, and worked with. I hope so.
That's awesome. I'm sure you did. And you ever felt conflicted? Because HR reports into the CEO in the end. Mm-hmm. So even if you felt like a coach, sometimes you still have this kind of duty to.
No, absolutely. Yes. And that was ultimately a big part of why I left like corporate internal HR and started working for a company in HR consulting, because that stuff would happen often. I'd have an employee, or I'd have an employer or manager come in, who, it doesn't matter who comes in first. And, the employee's telling me that they're working their hardest, that they've got kids at home that are sick, and they're trying to get here on time, and they're doing the best that they can, and they're learning, and yes, they make mistakes, but they're trying, and all this stuff. And so I would try to give them coaching on how to, try to improve their performance and meet expectations and do all these things. And then they'd leave, and, 2 hours later, a manager comes in and says, Amy, I have this employee who's the one who just left. There's a performance problem, and I need to fire her. So help me write her up and get her on a warning and move her out of the organization. And at the end of the day, like, HR reports to the CEO, so like if that manager can show me that they have a case where, okay, this is what the job requires, here's the mistakes that the person's making, there's no obvious harassment issue going on there, then it's my job to help them manage the employee and ultimately many instances they end up being fired. I couldn't tell you how many people I have had to fire, how many times I've had to do layoffs. I mean, that stuff is hard. It's hard to know that, you know, people that you work alongside, that in, you know, a week from now, they're going to come in and find out that they don't have a job anymore. Like that's not easy for me. And so eventually, you know, that did get to be a little bit too much. And so that's why I when I found the job that I was at most recently, where I was doing consulting, it was easier because in consulting, you're really just working with the business owners and the managers. I'm not dealing with the employees. So when the managers would call me about, you know, firing people or doing layoffs, that's not to say that that doesn't exist just because you're in consulting, but I'm not seeing the employee. So it became a little bit easier for me to not have it get really in my head and on my heart. And so I was just dealing directly with business owners. And in those instances, I felt like I was able to make a bit more of an impact of trying to influence, you know, having them do positive things or bring in, you know, improve their benefits, or we would run salary surveys and then, you know, they would give raises or something like that. So I felt like I was able to have more of a direct impact. And then it helped because when the bad things happen, I wasn't as in the middle of it all.
Do you think that, I mean, I'm trying to reflect a little bit, and with regard to the main question of this, like, interview, which is why our company is still mainly male dominated, even though HR departments are full with women.
Mm-hmm.
That let me know if I'm right. If women get more harassed statistically than men, and if women are statistically taking most of the time taking care of their sick kids, and which leads to like poorer performance, do you think these are causes for why women are less represented in companies?
Yeah, I personally think that like there is I'm spacing on the proper word. I think there, at least here in the US, like I can't speak to everywhere around the world, but especially here, like there is a systemic issue, in my opinion, around, you know, the proper care and support of women and mothers in the workplace in particular. Because what ends up happening, and let me be, I want to be like really clear. I don't think that every woman should get married or should be a mom if they don't want to. Like not everybody wants to do that. I think the challenge is that for a lot of the women who want to become parents and want to raise a family, even in families with super hands-on husbands, the bulk of the child care or even caring for older elderly parents, a lot of that falls on the women in the family. And what ends up happening, because there's not really great maternity leave programs, there's not great paid family leave for when your parents get sick or something like that. It's the moms who have to take this time off to go help their parents to raise the kids, to do what they need to do. So what happens is, I think so this is a perfect example. Like when I left my job just now, I went from being the HR consultant to leading the team of HR consultants. When I left and when I gave my resignation to come be an entrepreneur, I was talking with some of the women on my team saying like, you should go for my job. It's a great opportunity. All of them perfectly qualified and capable. None of them wanted it. Not a single one. And they all said, I'm afraid of how this is going to impact my life and my family right now. You know, moving into leadership is going to be too much. It's going to be too demanding on me. And I'm not going to be able, I still want to have balance and enjoy my life with my family and my kids. So what?
No, we lost Amy.
Thing too, there's less of them. And so the women who stay and just focus on career, which is a beautiful thing as well, there's less of their peers around them because everyone else is dealing with sick kids, sick parents, and whatever. And so then it ends up being this natural byproduct of there's just overwhelming men at the top, just everywhere. It doesn't matter how big or how small. And I believe that's because there's not good programs to help moms when they have babies, to help people, men and women, care for their parents or care for themselves so they can take the time to do the things that they do and have it not negatively impact their career. And I think that's what's ended up happening over the course of time.
Yeah, there are two things I wanna say. Is something that's really like frightening me about what you said is that women think about like how a promotion affects their family life, and so they don't take it. Instead of taking it and just making the best of it, like maybe a man would just take any promotion and then is gonna deal with it and like count on support. But women are like, no, like I know it's gonna be too difficult, and maybe this is also something like how we are raised, that we should take less risk and just be safe. Well, it's a super complicated and interesting topic. But and the second thing I wanted to say is, I also think that for men it can be hard to step into a supportive role. Like I think at work it's still not always very accepted when a man wants to maybe reduce his workload.
Yeah.
And so this also contributes to the problem of like the family tasks and helping kids. And Switzerland is a very conservative country for some things like that, and I know it's very rare. Like I have a cousin who just decided to take one day off per week, and it's super rare, and everyone is like my parents, they cannot believe this, you know, they think it's weird, and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like you see, you know, there are some I think the good thing is that I think as time is going along, people are seeing more and more that there needs to be more to support the moms and the dads. Like when I had my children, my husband works for a company where he was given, how many weeks? I think he had like 7 weeks of paid paternity leave, which for here in the US, like that's a big deal. In many instances, the dads don't get any paid time off. And so
in Switzerland, it's 1 day.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me. And so, you know, I think slowly, like some companies are starting to get it and they're seeing. And so like, you're starting to see a little bit of momentum and headway built around this, which I think is a good thing. But you're absolutely right. I think it's still very culturally just assumed that the woman is doing the majority of the supportive house bearing stuff. Like you don't see a ton of stay-at-home dads. You see a ton of stay-at-home moms. In some instances, it's not even a question. And so it is interesting. And it was, I remember feeling sad, thinking, wow, like not a single one of these women want to go for this, but I completely understand why, because, you know, they kind of want to stay, you know, where they're at, and they want to be comfortable and they want to have balance, and they know that they can have that now, and they don't know if they're going to be able to have that if they move into leadership. So they're going to pass, and it stinks because it was, you know, it was a great opportunity that, you know, everybody passed on. But again, you know, that's their choice, and I understand why, but that's exactly why not every single one of them had kids, but most of them do. But that's exactly why that the women who choose not to have kids and choose to go for those roles, that's why they don't see a lot of women around them at the table, because so many of them are saying, no, I don't want it. Or I can't do it, or I don't want to take the risk that I'll be able to figure it out. I'd rather just stay where I'm at and be comfortable. So that's why the women who do go for it, or who don't have the families, or who go for it anyways, there's just not a lot of women around them.
Yeah. And I think this is another topic, but I think something we don't think like in our day-to-day life is that when we don't go for this promotion or this new job opportunity, we forego like a higher pay, and so we forego a better retirement. And this is huge because there are so many women who find themselves alone at some point in their life, and then they're also financially struggling. But yeah, this is another topic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it totally. It impacts everything. It impacts earning potential. It's why the pay gap is as big as it is. Everything. I mean, and I think so much of it, if I try to drill it and boil it down, I think it just stems back to, you know, and I don't know what the answer looks like, but I think, you know, programs and support to help make it easier for parents, period, to have success in life as parents and people who have family and people who also work. I think it will make it better. It'll make it better for everybody. I even see in some different cultures, not even a men-women thing. In some cultures, it is a thing that they don't put their elderly parents in nursing homes. They take care of them themselves. And so then you're facing you're facing the same issue, but from a totally different perspective. You have, a lot of, I see this in a lot of immigrant families, like they then leave work and then go to take care of their sick parents. And now, again, you don't have immigrants represented in leadership because they've stepped out to go care for their parents. And so it's just, I think, more support to help people just have a life and care for family while still working, I think will be, I don't know. I think the answer is somewhere in there.
And so what would you say is your biggest learning? Now you just kind of boil down what would be a solution or an answer, but what would you say, what's your biggest learning for life from working 10 years in HR?
Yeah, so, oh gosh, that is a great question. I would say my biggest learning was that, gosh, I feel like I learned so much how to isolate it to one. My biggest learning as it relates to kind of the stuff that we've been talking about in particular is that, you don't have to tolerate that type of bad behavior. That was a big thing. You don't deserve to have to work that way. There are companies out there and nobody wants to be in a situation where they're so uncomfortable at work that they feel like they have to leave to go somewhere else. If you feel that way, that is an indication that you should be talking to the HR, to the union, to whomever it is. But sometimes, right, even doing that is such a headache, but there are a lot of good companies out there, and there are a lot of places that do want to do the right things. And so I think that, you don't have to tolerate that. You don't have to tolerate a career that makes you miserable. You don't have to tolerate an environment that makes you miserable, whether it's finding a different company, whether it's deciding to go and be an entrepreneur and start your own business, whatever the case is kind of, you deserve to feel happy with what you're doing, because you spend so much time doing it, and life's too short. And so there are good companies out there. There are companies who will take it seriously and who will defend you and protect you. And, there's different ways to, find happiness in your career. So not to, I guess the biggest learning was not to feel like you don't have options, because you do.
It resonates so much with me, because something I truly believe is that we are everyone is responsible for their happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe we tend to get lazy and to tolerate too much, but if we wait for other people to fight for us, you at some point you learn that you are responsible to be happy, and nobody's gonna do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say there's something that you just said there. The other thing I would say was a big learning is you have to be your own advocate. So whether that's, again, standing up to the guy or the girl or whomever is saying crummy things to you, you have to advocate for that. Whether it's asking for more money because you deserve that raise, you have to be your own advocate. If you want career growth, you have to speak up, because if you don't, companies aren't just going to do that for you. To your point, they're not just going to, they don't just defend you or anything like that. You have to, if you want something, you have to say it. You have to go for it. I think I was able to, over the course of my career, I was very lucky that, again, once, and even the first company, they weren't a terrible company. They mishandled that one situation, but by and large, my experience with them was a positive one. But I was adamant about making sure that I was going to continue to grow the way that I wanted to grow. And if the company wasn't going to take that seriously, then I found companies who did. I've had a few different jobs, but that was okay, because in each one I was moving up and up and up, and I was making more and more money and having more responsibility. And that's okay. You can advocate for yourself in that way. And as long as you're doing it, and you're not going in and demanding things, but you're treating it kind of professionally, I think you should do that. Don't be intimidated by that, because if you don't do it, then they're not going to do it for you.
I've been in jobs where I was working very hard and just hoping, or like I thought like my boss was noticing that I was working harder than anyone else, and so I didn't ask for a promotion and for more money because I thought it was obvious that I deserved it. But if you don't ask, you don't get anything.
Yeah. If you don't ask, you don't get it. And like on the tail end of my time in the corporate space, like I had a team of 10 women that reported to me. They were all wonderful. But again, the reality is every department, and I just so happen to, be in the general HR space, but every department's this way. Like companies only have so much money that they can give out in salaries, that they can give out in promotions, right? Like they can't give everybody everything what they want all the time. And so sometimes it's easy it can be easy for.
No, we lost Emmy again. And I think she'll be back in a few seconds.
Or I want to talk about what's next. I want to talk about my career growth, and can we make a development plan? Like if you don't do that, then they might not think to. And then so when the end of the year rolls around and the company's handing out raises, like they might not realize you want that. So I'm a big advocate of kind of standing up for yourself, not only in like, situations like harassment, but just like your career and your growth and your value to the company.
Cool. And is there anything that you would do differently? Is there like something that remains on your...
No, I don't know that I would. Actually, this was actually an interesting learning for me very early on. And again, it's funny that you asked that question at this time, coming off what I was just finishing saying. So at that first company, where I had a couple bad situations that happened, and that's fine. But my experience with them was still a positive one. When I went in to resign, and I told them that I wanted to go work in HR. They had said to me, "Oh, well, why didn't you talk to us first?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And they said, "We didn't even ask if we had openings in the HR department." And I remember thinking, that's interesting. It didn't even occur to me to ask them. And they said, well, always ask, like, you just never know. And so it's funny because I wouldn't change anything, because I think my career and where it went has kind of led me to where I am now. So even like the difficult spots, like I don't regret any of the choices that I made, but it was an interesting learning that I had never really thought about before that point. And after that, I always took it to heart was, always ask first internally about like my growth. Like they had said to me, wow, had we known that you wanted to move into HR, we would have probably tried to figure something out for you, because we are growing our HR department and there is room for us to take somebody on. And at that point it was too late. I went and I found something else. So I would say, always ask internally first. Was kind of like my big motto that I think shaped a lot of my career, and all the things that I did after that. I always asked and tried to really talk about my career and my growth and development internally first. And it was when I felt like, okay, you either aren't taking it seriously or there genuinely aren't options. Well, now I'm going to go look elsewhere.
Okay. So interesting stories.
Yeah.
Now you're a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about how you help women shine.
Yeah. So now, when I was deciding so I am a copywriter. I started a business as a copywriter a year and a half ago now, which is wild. And I sort of did it side hustle style for a long time, because again, in my most recent company, it really was a very good company. I had a great boss. I had a great team. And I was really pretty happy there. And so I was kind of doing both. So I was like, well, I love what I'm doing on the side, but I also love my job. And eventually it got to a point where I kind of realized, I really want full ownership over my time and my calendar. And I want to be with my kids a little bit more. And so I decided that I was going to leave and just kind of do my own thing. But at that point in time where it was starting to be like real, where like my husband and I were having real conversations about, okay, this is serious. Like we're talking about you leaving your job. I remember saying and thinking, well, I have something good right now. I'm only going to leave if it's going to be to do something like in my wildest dreams great. And so that's when I got really specific around, okay, I want to be a copywriter because I love that. I love writing, and I've always loved writing as part of, I did a lot of like email marketing and such in my corporate job. So that was like just something I loved and always like never thought that I could really do as my job. So it was going to be to do something that I loved for people that I love. So very quickly I said, well, I'm going to work very specifically with women who want to help other women. And so I work with coaches who are building courses or designing programs that are all aimed to help empower and lift up other women. And so I do all the writing and stuff for them so that they're able to do more of what they want to do. So like, it was funny. I sort of said earlier, being in HR kind of felt like a coach sometimes. I don't know that I'm cut out for being a coach. I don't like, it was funny. I felt that way, but it was like one of those things that I don't know that was my strong suit. And so this is my way of like trying to help the coaches be able to be a coach and not a writer. And at the end of the day, who we're helping is the women on the other side taking those courses or taking those programs. So it's cool because I feel like I'm helping women in a way that I wasn't able to before by either finding that course or that program or that career clarity or, the new business or whatever it is that they're looking for, helping them to find that.
I love it. And what's the name of your business?
It's called Gleam People Strategies, which is totally random and not necessarily would never scream that this chick is a copywriter, but that's okay. I like to describe it in a way. So the first part, Gleam, our family initials are like rearranged, and I like got on this big kick of wanting to help women shine. So there you go. And my strategy is to help the people, right? So Gleam People Strategies. I don't know. That's how we sort of came up with this funny, clever.
Cool. And if someone wants to work with you, then do you offer do you make special offer, or do you have standardized packages?
Yep. So I write a lot of stuff that is meant to try to help the coaches sell. So consulting in many respects is like sales in a lot of ways. So I have a really strong kind of sales background. And so it's kind of bringing together the writing that I love so much with the selling. And so I like to, I do have some standardized sort of packages. So I'll write sales pages when people are launching a course, or I'll write an email sequence when, someone gets a new subscriber on their email list, like the series of emails that follows afterwards. I will write some websites as well. So I do have, I would say those are kind of the three key things: are the websites, the email sequences, and the sales pages. But every now and again, I have someone who comes to me and wants a customized sort of package. And we just kind of figure it out then if it's a good fit or not a good fit. And the cool thing is that I hang out with a lot of writers. So it's fun when I'm like, well, I don't know that I'm the right person for you, but I know someone who is. And so then I like to just kind of refer people and just make it easier to find someone good.
Sounds good. So if anyone's watching and needs a copywriter, help from copywriter, then don't hesitate to reach out to Amy, and I'm sure you'll find a strong partner there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, I loved it.
I enjoyed this conversation. I'm so passionate about this topic. I've been wondering about this fact that, HR, a lot of women and companies male dominated. So I was super happy to find out about you, and so that we could discuss this topic. And if anyone has any comments, please make sure to write them in the comments below, and so we can keep the conversation going. And Amy, also feel free to answer in the comment. I will do it as well. And yes, I'm happy we had this time together, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.